Ambassador Zexthara's 4 eyes bulged as she stared at the transmission coming from the human colony of New Terra. The emergency council session had been called after humanity's response to their formal declaration of war arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters on Nexus Prime. "Play it again," demanded High Counselor Vorth, his crystalline form shimmering with agitation. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human male in casual clothing sitting behind what appeared to be a makeshift desk. Behind him, other humans could be seen going about their daily business, completely unbothered. The man wore a wide grin as he spoke directly into the camera. "Hey there, Galactic Council! Thanks for the war declaration. We got it this morning over coffee and had a good laugh about it." The human chuckled and held up a steaming mug. "Seriously, though, we appreciate the heads up. Most species just show up shooting without any warning at all. Very polite of you." Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the response they had expected. The human on the recording continued. "Now, we've got a few questions about this whole war thing. First, are you planning to actually show up? Because we've cleared our schedules for next Tuesday if that works for you. Second, should we prepare snacks? We've got some great barbecue recipes we've been wanting to try out on alien taste buds." Elder Quilnax of the Zephyrian Empire felt his throat sacs inflating with rage. "This is an insult! They dare mock the combined might of 16 galactic civilizations?" "Oh, and one more thing," the human added, leaning forward conspiratorially. "We've been wondering about your weapons. Are they the same ones you used against the Kretak Rebellion 50 years ago? Because we saw the footage of that, and honestly, we were expecting something a bit more impressive. Our kids' water guns pack more punch than those plasma rifles you were using." The recording ended, and the council chamber fell into stunned silence. Ambassador Zexthara was the first to speak, her voice trembling with disbelief. They laughed at us. The humans actually laughed at a formal declaration of war from the Galactic Council." "This is unprecedented," muttered Counselor Reth, his 6 arms gesticulating wildly. "No species has ever responded to our ultimatum with humor. They should be trembling in fear, preparing their defenses, begging for mercy." High Counselor Vorth's form brightened ominously. "Perhaps they don't understand the gravity of their situation. The humans are a young species, barely 300 years into space travel. They've only established colonies on 12 worlds. How could they possibly comprehend what they're facing?" 16 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, agreed Elder Quilnax. "Combined fleets numbering in the millions of ships. Ground forces that have conquered thousands of worlds. They must be in shock, using humor as a coping mechanism." But even as the council members tried to rationalize humanity's response, a nagging doubt crept into their minds. There had been something in that human's eyes, something that didn't match his casual demeanor, a glint of anticipation. The war had begun 3 months ago, when humanity had refused to comply with Galactic Council Resolution 7742 Alpha, which demanded they cease their expansion into the Outer Rim territories. The Council had claimed these regions for preservation purposes, though everyone knew it was really about controlling the rare quantum crystals found there. Humans had simply ignored the resolution and continued establishing colonies. When the Council sent enforcement fleets to remove them, something unexpected happened. The human colonies didn't resist or flee. Instead, they invited the alien forces down for what they called cultural exchange sessions. The Altarian fleet commander had reported back in confusion. "They offered us food and entertainment, Council. Their children performed something called a talent show for our warriors. One small human female sang a song about friendship, while another demonstrated a dance they called breakdancing. Our soldiers didn't know how to respond." Similar reports had come in from other enforcement attempts. Humans offering guided tours of their colonies, organizing sports competitions between human and alien forces, even teaching alien children how to play human games. The council had interpreted this as mockery, a deliberate insult to their authority, hence the formal declaration of war. We gave them every opportunity to comply, High Counselor Vorth had announced during the vote. Their continued defiance and their peculiar responses to our enforcement actions leave us no choice. The humans must be brought to heel. The vote had been unanimous. Now, staring at the aftermath of humanity's response, the council members were beginning to wonder if they had made a mistake. Perhaps we should investigate further, suggested Ambassador Zex Thera cautiously. The humans might possess defensive capabilities we're not aware of. Their casual response suggests confidence in their ability to resist our forces. Impossible, scoffed Elder Quillnax. We've analyzed their technology extensively. Chemical rockets, primitive fusion drives, kinetic weapons that fire chunks of metal. They're barely past the industrial age by galactic standards. Then how do you explain their attitude? Demanded Counselor Reth. Even the most primitive species show proper fear when faced with superior force. The Gorthak fought to the last being, but they understood they were doomed. The crystalline hive minds attempted to negotiate. The humans invite us to barbecues. High Counselor Vorth pulsed thoughtfully. There may be a simple explanation. Human psychology might be fundamentally different from what we understand. Perhaps laughter is their fear response. Or, said a new voice from the council chamber's entrance, perhaps they know something you don't. All eyes turned to see Intelligence Director Kassoth entering the chamber, her serpentine form gliding across the floor with urgent purpose. Director, acknowledged High Counselor Vorth. Do you have new information about the human response? Indeed, High Counselor. We've been monitoring human communication networks since their reply was transmitted. The chatter is illuminating. She activated a portable holographic projector, displaying intercepts of human conversations from across their colonies. Listen to this exchange between two human military commanders on New Terra, she said, selecting a file. The voices were clear, speaking in the human language that the Council's translation software had long since mastered. General, have you seen the Council's war declaration? Thompson's response video is already going viral across the colonies. Saw it this morning, Colonel. Kid did good. Nice touch with the barbecue invitation. Think they'll actually show up for the party? Oh, they'll show up all right. Question is whether they'll be ready for what's waiting for them. The boys in R&D finished the new toys? 3 days ago. Dr. Chen says the field tests exceeded all expectations. The Zephyrian plasma rifles they captured last month couldn't even scratch the paint. The transmission cut out, and Director Kassoth selected another file. This one is from a human civilian on the colony of Hope's Landing. Mom, did you see the news? The Galactic Council declared war on us. Yes, dear. Your father's already started preparing the guest rooms. Guest rooms? For the prisoners, sweetie. We can't just leave them in cages. That would be inhospitable. The council chamber fell silent once more, but this time the silence was heavy with a different kind of tension. Director, High Counselor Vorth said carefully, are you suggesting that the humans are prepared for this conflict? I'm suggesting, High Counselor, that we may have severely underestimated our opponents. Director Kassoth's eyes glittered dangerously. The humans aren't laughing because they're afraid or because they don't understand. They're laughing because they think this war is going to be easy. Easy? Elder Quillnax's throat sacs inflated again. For them? That's impossible. Is it? Director Kassoth activated another display, showing tactical analyses of human colonies. Look at these settlements. What do you see? The council members studied the images. The colonies appeared typical for a young spacefaring civilization. Modest cities, agricultural zones, small spaceports. I see standard colonial development, said Ambassador Zexathara. Look closer, Director Kassoth urged. Notice anything unusual about the placement of their buildings? The spacing between settlements? The seemingly random placement of their industrial complexes? Counselor Reth leaned forward, his 6 arms manipulating the display controls to zoom in on different areas. The layout does seem inefficient. No clear defensive perimeters, no obvious military installations. Exactly, Director Kassoth hissed. Because they don't need obvious defenses. Our intelligence suggests that human technology isn't primitive at all. It's deliberately disguised to appear primitive. That's impossible, Elder Quillnax protested. Our sensor sweeps would have detected advanced technology. Would they? Director Kassoth challenged. What if human technology works on principles we don't understand? What if their weapons don't register on our sensors because they operate using methods we've never encountered? She pulled up another file, this one showing surveillance footage from a recent enforcement action. Watch this. Altarian ground forces attempting to confiscate human mining equipment 3 weeks ago. The display showed heavily armed Altarian soldiers approaching a human mining site. The humans appeared to be operating primitive drilling equipment, extracting quantum crystals using what looked like enhanced versions of traditional mining tools. The Altarians demanded the humans cease operations and surrender the crystals, Director Kassoth narrated. Watch what happens next. On screen, a human worker casually tapped the side of his drill. The massive mining machine suddenly transformed, mechanical components reshaping themselves with fluid grace until what had been a simple drill became something else entirely. Something that made several council members gasp in recognition. By the void, whispered Councillor Reth. Is that a molecular disintegrator? Military grade, confirmed Director Kassoth. Capable of breaking down matter at the atomic level. Notice how quickly the transformation occurred. The Altarians didn't even have time to react. But they didn't fire, observed Ambassador Zexathara. The weapon powered down after the transformation. Because the demonstration was enough, the Altarian commander immediately withdrew his forces and reported a technical malfunction in his equipment that prevented him from completing his mission. The implications were staggering. If humans could disguise military-grade molecular disintegrators as mining equipment, what else were they hiding? There's more, Director Kassoth continued, clearly enjoying the effect her revelations were having on the Council. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual energy signatures from human space, signatures that don't match any known technology in our databases. Unknown technology? High Councillor Vorth's form dimmed with concern. How unknown? Completely. The energy patterns are unlike anything we've encountered in 15,000 years of galactic exploration. They seem to violate several fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. Elder Quillnax's throat sacs were now fully deflated, his earlier bravado replaced by growing unease. Are you telling us that humanity might actually pose a threat to the combined forces of the Galactic Council? I'm telling you, Director Kassoth said grimly, that everything we think we know about humanity might be wrong. And if I'm right, then their laughter in response to our declaration of war wasn't mockery. It was pity. The council chamber fell into chaos as the implications sank in. Voices rose in alarm, demanding answers, explanations, solutions. But High Councillor Vorth remained silent, his crystalline form pulsing slowly as he processed this new information. Finally he spoke, his voice carrying over the tumult. How long until our fleets reach human space? 72 hours, High Councillor, reported the tactical officer. And how long to recall them? Impossible, sir. They're beyond communication range until they reach the human colonies. High Councillor Vorth dimmed further. Then the die is cast. In 3 days, we'll discover whether Director Kassoth's suspicions are correct. And if they are? Asked Ambassador Zexathara. Then, said High Councillor Vorth quietly, we may have just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy. As the council session dissolved into frantic planning and debate, none of them noticed the small smile that played across Director Kassoth's serpentine features. She had told them the truth, but not all of it. Her intelligence network had uncovered far more than energy signatures and hidden weapons. They had intercepted human communications that spoke of contingency plans, of preparations that had been in motion for decades, of something humans called the ace in the hole. But some truths were too dangerous to share, even with the High Council. They would learn soon enough when the fleets reached human space. In 72 hours, the galaxy would discover what happened when you declared war on humanity and gave them time to prepare. Director Kassoth just hoped there would be enough left of the Galactic Council's forces to learn from their mistake. Fleet Admiral Thexmar stood on the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Victory, watching the tactical display show the final approach to the human colony of New Terra. Around him, his command staff moved with practiced efficiency, coordinating the largest military operation in Galactic Council history. 16 different species had contributed their finest ships to this armada. The sleek organic vessels of the Zephyrian Empire flowed through space like living creatures. The geometric perfection of crystalline hive mind ships reflected starlight from their faceted hulls. The massive dreadnoughts of the Gorthak Confederation bristled with enough firepower to level continents. In total, the fleet numbered 47,000 vessels of various classes, carrying enough warriors to conquer entire star systems. It was overwhelming force by any reasonable measure. Yet as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Terra system, Admiral Thexmar felt an unexpected chill run down his chitinous spine. "Admiral," reported his sensor operator, "we're receiving a transmission from the human colony." "Already? We just arrived." Admiral Thexamar's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Put it through." The main display activated, showing the same human male from the previous transmission. He was still sitting behind his casual desk, still holding a steaming mug, still wearing that insufferable grin. "Well, hey there, Galactic Council Fleet. Welcome to New Terra. You made good time. We were expecting you tomorrow, but early is good too." The human took a sip from his mug and gestured toward the camera. "As you can see, we've prepared a little welcome committee for you." Admiral Thexmar frowned. "Welcome committee? What is he talking about? Sensor sweep now." His tactical officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system, but they don't match any known ship configurations." "Show me," Admiral Thexmar commanded. The display switched to a system-wide tactical view, and every being on the bridge fell silent. The human system wasn't empty, as expected. It was filled with objects that defied immediate classification, massive structures that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and everywhere energy readings that shouldn't be possible. "By the sacred void," whispered the Zephyrian liaison officer. "What are those things?" The human on the transmission seemed to hear the question despite the communication being one way. "Oh, you like our decorations? We've been working on those for about 50 years now, ever since we realized the galaxy wasn't as friendly as we'd hoped." Admiral Thexmar found his voice. "This is Fleet Admiral Thexmar of the Galactic Council Enforcement Armada. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences." The human's grin widened. "Surrender? Admiral, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not here to surrender. We're here to demonstrate why declaring war on humanity was the worst decision your council ever made." "Impossible!" Admiral Thexmar's exoskeleton rattled with anger. "You face the combined might of 16 civilizations, 47,000 ships, billions of warriors." 47,236, actually, the human corrected helpfully. "We've been counting as you approached. Nice fleet, by the way. Very traditional design philosophy. Lots of guns, heavy armor, brute force approach. We appreciate the classics." The casual dismissal stung more than any insult could have. Admiral Thexmar turned to his weapons officer. "Target their communications array. Show them we're serious." "Firing," reported the weapons officer. A brilliant plasma beam lanced out from the inevitable victory, enough energy to vaporize a small moon. It struck one of the strange structures near New Terra with perfect accuracy, and did absolutely nothing. The energy simply dispersed harmlessly across the surface of the structure, which didn't even seem to notice the attack. "Oh, you guys brought plasma weapons," the human observed, sounding delighted. "That's so retro. We used to use those too back in the early days. But then we realized there were much more interesting ways to manipulate matter and energy." He gestured, and every screen on every ship in the Armada suddenly displayed the same image, a close-up view of the structure that had just been attacked. The surface was completely unmarked, but now symbols were appearing across it. Mathematical equations that made Admiral Thexmar's brain hurt to process. "Those equations describe the fundamental forces holding your plasma together," the human explained conversationally. "Want to see what happens when we change a few variables?" Before Admiral Thexmar could respond, every plasma weapon system in his fleet simultaneously powered down. Not shut down, not destroyed. Simply ceased to function, as if the very concept of plasma as a weapon had been revoked. "How?" The question escaped Admiral Thexmar's lips before he could stop it. "Physics is really more like guidelines than actual rules," the human replied. "At least, that's what we've discovered. The universe is much more flexible than most species realize. You just have to know how to ask nicely." Across the fleet, panic was beginning to set in. Captains reported weapons failures, shield malfunctions, and sensor anomalies. The neat formations began to waver as ships struggled with systems that no longer behaved according to known principles. "Admiral," his communications officer called out urgently, "I'm receiving distress signals from the entire fleet. Ships are reporting that their gravitational drives are being affected. Some vessels are losing artificial gravity entirely." On the display, the human nodded sympathetically. "Yeah, sorry about that. Gravity's actually a really complex force, much more complex than your scientists understand. We're just tweaking it a little bit to make a point." As if to demonstrate, several of the larger dreadnoughts began slowly rotating end over end, their crews presumably floating helplessly inside as their gravity generators failed to function. "This is impossible," Admiral Thexmar muttered. "No species can manipulate fundamental forces on this scale." "Most species can't," the human agreed. "But then most species don't grow up on a planet that's actively trying to kill them every single day. Most species don't have to deal with weather that can level cities, wildlife that considers them a light snack, and tectonic activity that regularly rearranges their continents." He paused to take another sip from his mug. "Most species develop technology to overcome obstacles. Humans developed technology to make the obstacles work for us instead. When you live on a death world, you learn to make death itself your ally." The implications sent a chill through Admiral Thexmar. A death world. The Galactic Council classified worlds as death worlds when they were too dangerous for normal life to evolve. The fact that humans had not only evolved on such a world but thrived there had always been noted as a curiosity in their files. Now it was beginning to seem like a warning they had ignored. "You want to see what growing up on Earth teaches you?" the human asked, his grin taking on a sharper edge. "Let me show you." The space around New Terra suddenly came alive with activity. The strange structures began moving, reshaping themselves with fluid grace. What had looked like space stations revealed themselves to be something far more sophisticated. "Those aren't ships," whispered the crystalline hive mind representative. "They're ecosystem." The human heard that too. "Very good. Gold star for the crystal people. They're not ships in any traditional sense. They're living spaces that exist in harmony with the local space-time continuum. We don't fight the universe, Admiral. We convince it to fight for us." As the structures moved, reality itself seemed to bend around them. Light followed impossible paths. Distance became negotiable. The human fleet, if it could even be called a fleet, demonstrated capabilities that violated everything the Galactic Council understood about space warfare. Now, the human continued, let's talk about your invasion plans. We've been monitoring your communications, by the way. Very thorough planning. Multiple attack vectors, systematic bombardment protocols, ground invasion strategies, very professional. Admiral Thexmar's blood ran cold. Their communications were supposed to be encrypted with quantum-level security. The thing is, the human went on, your entire strategy is based on fighting other people like yourselves, people who follow the same rules, use the same physics, think in the same patterns. But humans don't follow rules, Admiral. We make suggestions to reality, and reality usually goes along with it because it's easier than arguing. To demonstrate, one of the human structures simply appeared next to the inevitable victory. Not traveled there, not teleported, just suddenly existed where it hadn't been a moment before. Spatial displacement, the human explained. We asked space to move over a bit, and it did. Very accommodating, space is, once you get to know it personally. Admiral Thexmar stared at the structure now floating beside his flagship. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to contemplate, like crystallized music or solid poetry. It radiated a sense of impossible age and equally impossible newness, as if it had existed forever and had just been born. Your move, Admiral, the human said gently. You came here to conquer us. We're giving you the opportunity to try. Deploy your ground forces, launch your fighters, execute your battle plans. We promise not to interfere. Not to interfere? Admiral Thexamar's voice cracked. You've already disabled half our systems. Oh, that wasn't interference. That was just us being polite. We turned off your weapons so nobody would get hurt by accident. But if you really want to fight, we're happy to turn them back on. War should be fair after all. Before Admiral Thexmar could respond, every system in his fleet suddenly sprang back to life. Weapons powered up, shields activated, gravity returned to normal. Everything functioned perfectly, exactly as it had before the humans had casually broken it. There you go, the human said cheerfully. All fixed. Now you can give us your best shot. Admiral Thexmar stared at the tactical display, his mind reeling. The humans had just demonstrated the ability to casually disable and then restore the advanced technology of 16 different civilizations simultaneously. They had manipulated fundamental forces, bent space-time, and done it all while carrying on a casual conversation. And now they were offering to let him attack them. This is a trap, he muttered. Of course it's a trap, the human agreed. The best kind of trap. The kind where the prey knows it's a trap but walks into it anyway because they don't have any other choice. Admiral Thexmar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at him, waiting for orders. Behind them, the largest military force in galactic history sat frozen in space, facing an enemy that had just politely offered to let them start a fight they couldn't possibly win. The smart thing would be to retreat. Report back to the Council. Recommend immediate surrender, and hope the humans were as reasonable in victory as they seemed to be in the face of invasion. But Admiral Thexmar was a warrior of the old school. He had never retreated in his life. His honor, his duty, his very identity demanded that he fight. All ships, he commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet communications. Prepare for full-scale assault. Target all hostile structures. We end this now. The human's grin grew even wider. Now that's the spirit, Admiral. This is going to be fun. Fair warning, though. We're about to show you what happens when you pick a fight with a species that learned warfare from hurricanes, earthquakes, and the occasional angry volcano. Admiral Thexmar's last coherent thought before the battle began was wondering what exactly he had gotten his people into. He was about to find out. The battle began with the fury of 47,000 ships firing simultaneously. The space around New Terra erupted in a display of raw destructive power that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Plasma beams, antimatter torpedoes, gravity bombs, and quantum disruptors filled the void with enough energy to crack planets. For exactly 7 seconds, it was the most devastating military assault in recorded galactic history. Then the humans responded. Admiral Thexmar watched in horror as the massive bombardment simply stopped, not deflected by shields, not absorbed by defensive systems. The weapons fire reached the human structures and ceased to exist, as if the very concept of violence had been politely declined. "Interesting approach," the human on the display commented, seemingly unaffected by the reality-breaking demonstration around him. "Very enthusiastic. We appreciate the effort. But you know, the thing about learning warfare from natural disasters is that you develop a different perspective on destruction." One of the human structures began to change, its flowing form reshaping itself into something that made Admiral Thexmar's eyes water to look at directly. Geometry that shouldn't exist folded in on itself, creating patterns that suggested vast intelligence coupled with barely restrained power. See? When a volcano erupts, it's not angry, it's not evil, it's just expressing its nature. Same with earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis. They're not malicious forces, they're just events, natural processes following their own logic. The structure finished its transformation, and suddenly every ship in the Galactic Council fleet found itself somewhere else. Not transported, not moved. Simply existing in a different location than they had been a moment before. The entire armada was now scattered across a region of space roughly 10 light-years in diameter, individual ships separated by millions of kilometers. "What we learned from living with natural disasters," the human continued conversationally, "is that the best way to deal with overwhelming force isn't to oppose it directly. It's to redirect it, channel it, make it work for you instead of against you." Admiral Thexmar frantically checked his position. His flagship was now floating alone in deep space, the rest of his fleet scattered across impossible distances. At sublight speeds, it would take years for the ships to regroup. Even with hyperspace drives, coordinated action was now impossible. "How?" he whispered. "Oh, that's easy," the human replied, apparently able to hear him despite the impossible distance. "We asked Space to give everyone a little more room to think. Space was happy to oblige. It's very accommodating once you learn to communicate with it properly." Across the scattered fleet, panic was setting in. Captains reported navigation failures, communication disruptions, and sensor readings that made no sense. The carefully planned invasion had become chaos in seconds. "Now," the human said, his voice somehow reaching every ship simultaneously, "let's talk about why you're really here. It's not about the Outer Rim territories, is it? That's just the excuse. The real reason is that you're afraid of us." Admiral Thexmar's exoskeleton bristled. "Afraid? We represent 16 advanced civilizations. We have no reason to fear a primitive species like humanity." "Primitive?" The human laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed genuine amusement without mockery. "Admiral, we've been monitoring galactic civilization for 3 centuries. We know about the stagnation, the technological plateau you've all been stuck on for millennia. The fact that your most advanced weapons are basically improved versions of technology you developed 10,000 years ago." The accusation stung because it was true. Despite all their power, the member civilizations of the Galactic Council had been technologically static for eons. Innovation had slowed to a crawl, replaced by refinement of existing principles. "You're afraid," the human continued, "because we represent something you thought was impossible: change, growth, evolution. And not just biological evolution, but technological and philosophical evolution. We're what happens when a species refuses to accept that impossible is a real limitation. To demonstrate, The scattered human structures throughout the system began performing feats that violated every known principle of physics. They folded space like origami, painted new stars into existence with casual gestures, and turned vacuum into substance with the ease of breathing. This is what 300 years of unrestricted innovation looks like, when it's guided by a species that evolved in constant cooperation with catastrophic forces. We don't just build technology, Admiral. We make friends with the underlying principles of reality itself. A new voice cut across the communication channel. Human vessel, this is Captain Yisthek of the Serpentine Concordat. Our ships pose no threat to your people. We request permission to withdraw from this engagement. Admiral Thexmar felt a chill run through him. If individual captains began surrendering, the entire operation would collapse. "Permission granted, Captain Yisthek," the human replied promptly. "Vector coordinates are being transmitted to your navigation system. Safe travels, and thank you for being reasonable about this." On the tactical display, Admiral Thexmar watched as one of the Serpentine ships simply vanished, presumably returned to Concordat space. "Any other captains who would prefer to leave?" the human asked politely. "No judgment here. This is a very strange situation, and we understand if some of you would rather not participate." The communication channels exploded with requests for withdrawal. Within minutes, nearly a third of the fleet had accepted the human offer and disappeared from the battlefield. "Cowards!" Admiral Thexmar roared. "You are warriors of the Galactic Council. You do not retreat from battle." "Actually," the human interjected gently, "they're being smart. Would you like to know what we've prepared for those who choose to stay and fight?" Before Admiral Thexmar could answer, the space around his remaining ships began to change. Reality took on a fluid quality, as if the vacuum of space had become an ocean. His ship bobbed gently on waves of crystallized starlight, while impossible aurora danced between the scattered vessels. "Welcome to battlefield physics, human style," the human announced. "The rules here are a bit different from what you're used to. For instance, aggressive action creates sympathetic resonance in local space-time. Watch. A Gorthak dreadnought, apparently deciding that the situation called for desperate measures, fired its main gun at the nearest human structure. The massive energy beam lanced out, only to curve back on itself in an impossible spiral before striking the ship that had fired it. The dreadnought's shields absorbed the impact without damage, but the message was clear. In this strange battlefield, attacking the humans meant attacking yourself. Physics becomes much more intuitive when you stop thinking of it as a set of rigid laws and start thinking of it as a complex ecosystem, the human explained. Everything is connected to everything else. Actions have consequences that ripple through the fundamental forces. Violence creates instability, which creates unpredictable results. Several more ships immediately powered down their weapons. "But cooperation," the human continued, "cooperation creates harmony, mutual benefit, stable systems that can accomplish remarkable things." As he spoke, the remaining human structures began demonstrating their true capabilities. They reached out across space with tendrils of pure possibility, gently touching each of the Galactic Council ships. Instead of damage, however, the touch brought gifts. Admiral Thexmar stared at his instrument readings in amazement. His ship's energy efficiency had just improved by 300%. His communication systems were now capable of instantaneous transmission across galactic distances. His sensors could penetrate dimensions he hadn't known existed. "We're upgrading your technology," the human explained. "Consider it a welcome gift. These improvements will make your journey home much more comfortable." "Why?" Admiral Thexmar found himself asking. "We came here to conquer you, to force you into compliance with the Galactic Council. Why are you helping us?" "Because," the human said, and for the first time his expression became completely serious. That's what people do. When someone makes a mistake, you help them fix it. When someone is afraid, you help them feel safe. When someone attacks you out of ignorance, you educate them instead of destroying them. He paused, looking directly at Admiral Thexmar through the display. You're not our enemies, Admiral. You're our neighbors. Confused, frightened neighbors who made some poor decisions based on incomplete information, but neighbors nonetheless. And we take care of our neighborhood. The implications of that statement sent shockwaves through the remaining fleet. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were taking responsibility for the entire local galactic region. The Galactic Council has maintained order through force for millennia, Admiral Thexmar said slowly. That is the only way to govern diverse species with conflicting interests. Is it? The human asked. Or is that just the only way you've tried? What if there were alternatives? What if instead of imposing order through fear, you could create harmony through cooperation? What if instead of ruling through superior firepower, you could lead through superior ideas? As he spoke, new images appeared on every ship's display. Visions of planets where multiple species lived and worked together in unprecedented cooperation. Cities that existed in harmony with their natural environments. Technologies that enhanced life instead of threatening it. This is what we've been building in the Outer Rim, the human explained. Not human colonies, but cooperative communities. Zephyrians working alongside humans to develop new forms of bioengineering. Crystalline hive minds partnering with our scientists to explore quantum consciousness. Gorthak engineers collaborating with our builders to create structures that exist in perfect harmony with local gravitational fields. Admiral Thexmar studied the images with growing amazement. These weren't conquests or subjugations. They were genuine partnerships, equal collaborations between different species working toward common goals. The quantum crystals in the Outer Rim, he said slowly. You're not mining them, you're cultivating them. With the help of several Altarian geological specialists, the human confirmed. Turns out the crystals are semi-sentient. They actually want to help, but the traditional mining methods were essentially torture to them. When you approach them respectfully, they're happy to grow in configurations that benefit everyone involved. The revelation struck Admiral Thexmar like a physical blow. The Galactic Council's entire justification for this war had been based on preventing human exploitation of a protected resource. But the humans weren't exploiting anything. They were creating something unprecedented. The Council will never accept this, he said finally. Change threatens their power structure. They'll keep sending fleets until you're destroyed or until they are. No, the human said quietly. They won't. How can you be so certain? Because they're about to receive a very interesting transmission from Director Kassoth. Admiral Thexmar's blood chilled. How do you know about Director Kassoth? The same way we knew about your fleet movements, your battle plans, and your technological capabilities, the human replied. She's been working with us for almost 50 years. The implications exploded through Admiral Thexmar's mind. The Galactic Council's intelligence director, their most trusted source of information about human capabilities, had been collaborating with the enemy all along. Every report she filed, every assessment she made, every warning she gave was carefully crafted to create this exact situation. The human continued. A massive military operation that would demonstrate the futility of force against humanity, while simultaneously showing the benefits of cooperation. She manipulated the Council into declaring war, Admiral Thexmar whispered. She helped them realize that declaring war was pointless, the human corrected. The Council needed to see the difference between what they thought humanity was and what humanity actually is. Now they have. A new transmission indicator appeared on Admiral Thexmar's communication panel. The seal of the Galactic Council High Command blinked urgently. Admiral Thexmar, came High Counselor Vorth's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. You are ordered to stand down immediately and return to Nexus Prime for emergency consultation. Do not engage the humans under any circumstances. Understood. High Counselor, Admiral Thexmar replied automatically. Good, the human said with satisfaction. Director Kassoth's full report should be very enlightening for them. Complete technological assessments, detailed cooperation proposals, and a comprehensive explanation of why humanity is the best thing that's happened to this galaxy in 1,000,000 years. Admiral Thexmar looked around his bridge one more time. His officers were staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror to confusion. In the space of an hour, everything they thought they knew about the universe had been turned upside down. What happens now? He asked. Now, the human said, his familiar grin returning. You go home and help your people understand that the galaxy just got a lot bigger and a lot more interesting. The age of ruling through fear is over. The age of cooperation is about to begin. And if some species refuse to cooperate, the human's expression became thoughtful. Then they'll have to deal with the consequences of their choice. But not through violence, through isolation. Species that insist on conquest and domination will find themselves alone in a universe that's moved beyond such things. Trust me, loneliness is a much more effective teacher than warfare. Admiral Thexmar nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity represented. Not conquerors, but catalysts. Not destroyers, but transformers. Permission to ask one final question? Of course. Why reveal all this now? You could have maintained the deception indefinitely. The human's smile became genuinely warm. Because it's time, Admiral. The galaxy is ready for the next step in its evolution, and evolution requires cooperation, not competition. Partnership, not domination. Growth, not stagnation. He gestured, and suddenly, Admiral Thexmar's ship was back in formation with the rest of his fleet, all vessels miraculously restored to their original positions as if the entire engagement had been a shared dream. Besides, the human added with a wink, we were getting tired of pretending to be primitive. Do you have any idea how hard it is to make fusion drives look impressive when you've been using dimensional fold engines for a century? As the Galactic Council fleet began its journey home, Admiral Thexmar found himself looking forward to the future for the first time in years. Behind them, the human structures continued their impossible dance through space, reshaping reality with casual grace. The war was over before it had truly begun, but the real transformation was just getting started.